You are now listening to the Going Deep podcast with your hosts, Kevin Massari and Mike Bunt, live from the Cover One Sports Network. Here we go.
Welcome into a new edition of the Going Deep podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Massari, here with Mike Bunt. And boy, a lot happened over the last few days, Mike. Just some wild circumstances in the Bills-Bengals game. And obviously the wonderful news today coming out about Damar Hamlin and his great progress to date so far with this situation. And it's been an extremely hard 3 days for Bills fans and to process this information. And obviously there is so many football ramifications that we can get to later and at a different time. But I wanted to spend the first so often talking about what had transpired on the field and kind of what your takeaway is from all this, Mike.
Yeah. First takeaway is thank God we got a positive update today on Damar Hamlin being responsive, being able to clutch arms with his hands, being able to write, and it looks like we got the best news possible earlier this afternoon. So first off, that's the best thing we could have asked for. So thank God for that. And just going back, such a scary incident. I've never seen anything like that before. I know the overwhelming majority of us have never seen anything like that before. And just, I'm really kind of at a loss of words. It's just something that was incredibly scary. And thank God it looks like Damar is going to be able to recover and be okay.
Yeah. And wonderful news. All my thoughts and prayers are to Damar and his family. And what a wonderful story has come out with the $7.3 million for the Chasing M Foundation. Has been a wonderful thing to see. You got his contract 4 years, $3.65 million. And you have this wonderful act from around the league and around the different communities. You had, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, the Ursays, Belichick and Kraft. You had, so many different Andy Dalton, so many different people donating to this cause. And it's been just wonderful to see the league come together and come up with such a wonderful solution in terms of such a dire and just such a sad circumstance, Mike. That's been awesome to see what they've been able to do. And that money will go to extremely great use in the Pittsburgh area for the toy drive and other events going back to school, and others as have been updated per his GoFundMe account and from his family and manager and team there. And just Damar as a human, you have a Ty Dunn piece up on his website that's free of charge. You can read about Damar and his backstory. It's an amazing read. So please make sure you go ahead and check that out. It's totally worth your time to read that article. And it's labeled on the Go Long podcast, golongtd.com, why Damar Hamlin's exactly what the Buffalo Bills need. And it's a lot about who he is, his backstory, him as a person, and an incredible, incredible story. So please make sure you take a minute and check that out. It's worth everything and just totally paints the picture on this community. Mike, as we kind of look at this situation and what Zach Taylor and Sean McDermott were able to do in dire straits, and how Sean was able to lead and say, I had to be in the hospital for my guy. You see T. Higgins going to the hospital and since been there, and you see Stephon Diggs make his way there and get in security. You can't help but think that there's some good actions by these humans across the league.
Yeah, the one thing really on display the last few days was the brotherhood that is the NFL. And oftentimes we look at these players as enemies on the gridiron, but really they are all players that have gone through common experiences their entire life, trying to achieve the goal of making it to the NFL. They all know how difficult it is to get there. And when they see something like that happen, you really see how united they really are on things that are serious like this. So I was proud of both coaches to go to basically come together and say this game can't be played. We can't put our players through this, because I think if this was 30 years ago, they might have finished this game if this was in the 80s, early 90s. And there's no way. I think it was pretty obvious early on. There was no way that this game could go on after what took place. It's also kind of brought out the good of humanity, even off the NFL, to see the nation come together to rally behind Damar and raise money for his foundation and look out for his health. Obviously, this game was supposed to be one of the biggest games of the year, taking place on Monday Night Football in front of the entire nation. So to have everyone kind of come together and pray and come together regardless of if you're religious or not, I thought that was a great sign of unity. And you also mentioned the Damar Hamlin side of it. We look at these players sometimes as infallible and gladiators on the football field, and it's because they're so spectacular that the average human can't even come close to doing what they do. So oftentimes when they make a poor play or someone takes advantage, we get so upset and frustrated, and we don't often look at the human side of what these players go through. And to get to kind of know more about who Damar Hamlin is on and off the field, his journey, how he was close with Dane Jackson growing up and playing at Pitt, and hearing all these things about how Damar even stayed at Pitt because he wanted his younger brother to have a role model in his life to look up to in his hometown. We're hearing so many great things about Damar the person, and you can really see the impact that he has made on this Bills team and the players, the coaching staff across the league. Even Mike Tomlin, who has had a long-term relationship with Damar, was just talking about what an incredible human being he is. So I think if there was anything positive that it did come out of this, it's that we are now appreciating who Damar is as a person. We are thankful that he has survived this. Obviously still has a long process ahead of him, but just thankful and recognizing that this has been a unifying force and has brought out the better side of humanity in the last few days.
Yeah, and did we win just goes to his character, what he wrote down on the first things he said while writing. Did we win? And they responded, yes, you did, from the situation that occurred. So I think that was just a powerful statement of who he was as an individual, that I believe his father said he asked, he would expect him to ask about this. And it's great to show his neurological level of thinking about the game and almost picking up where he left off. Has been wonderful on a prognosis standpoint of that. So that was great to see. And then when the news was given to the Buffalo Bills of this scenario and him waking up, as Kyrie Elam tweeted, Josh Allen said they all got a big boost of energy per his press conference here just a few hours ago. So that was wonderful to see the team get that boost. We saw the picture from practice of Josh Allen and of Trey White. And we saw Deion Dawkins on air a couple nights ago saying, this is all for Damar, and the season is all for him and his family. So just the mental aspect of it is just such a hard experience. Like, you had T. Higgins take it hard, him taking some heat for the hit. And Josh Allen said today that you should be no way blaming T. Higgins for that play across the league. Mike, will we have some type of reaction from this? I think the NFL needs to look hard and make sure we're looking at player safety and insurance benefits and things like that as this stuff transpires. And is there anything we can do to test hearts to limit the impact, whether it's pads, whether it's equipment, whether it's anything in these scenarios, so this doesn't happen again where safety goes to tackle a receiver and we see this kind of outcome? Whatever the league can do to make sure it's researching and spending money on player safety is of the utmost importance.
I think this was a tough one because there are a lot of things that you can test for. And there are times when somebody has an undiagnosed medical condition that unfortunate things happen where you might see a person collapse on a court. You see it happen in basketball more often than probably other sports, sometimes soccer. But obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor. But what many people in the field have been thinking that it is something called commotio cordis, which is a blunt force basically hit to the chest in basically precisely the right spot during the exact period during your heartbeat cycle that can basically cause this type of reaction. And from what I've been reading and listening to, it seems like more of a freak accident than anything else. And that's really where the tragic, traumatic part really comes into it, is this really isn't something that I believe you can prevent. It's almost more so unlikely that you hit the lottery for the most horrendous thing that could potentially happen in a football game. T. Higgins does not deserve any blame for what happened on Monday night. He does not deserve any blame at all. I'm glad Josh Allen mentioned that. It was a football play. It was a very unfortunate football play. And the tragic part is that that's something that is a collision that probably happens almost every time there's a play. Yeah. And unfortunately, we saw the worst case result, but thankfully the NFL, the medical staff, they're the best in the world at responding to things like this. And because of that, they were able to save his life. If this happened at a park, he probably wouldn't have had the result that we have had at this moment in time. But I know our guest is here, Kev, so I will let you hand it off.
And real quickly, the Hamlin jersey should be available. I'm not sure if they're going to, I would be shocked if they don't do another reorder of them. You can customize them on the Fanatics. They're donating all of their proceeds to his foundation. So you're able to go ahead and purchase that. I'm hoping soon you can do a custom. I don't know if all those proceeds will go. You can do a custom Damar Hamlin jersey up there still on Fanatics, and they will donate the proceeds. So we'll see when his exact jersey item number comes back into stock. But that's what we were told, that they will donate all of the proceeds to the Catching M foundations. So with that all being said, we have a guest today, Mark Schofield. We have Mark every Patriots week for the last few years. So it is Patriots week. It is a game that's important for the Bills, probably more important for the Patriots in certain ways. And, it's my honor to bring on Mark for this, in this light of this circumstances. Obviously, we're Tuesday at 7 show. And, we've obviously spent a couple of days to make sure that we heard good news from the Hamlin situation, and we're back at it. The Bills signed a safety. They have been practicing. The Patriots have been practicing. By all accounts, there's news that this game will clearly go on. Mark, give you a minute to come on, kind of tell us your thoughts, and from your outsider perspective, watching that Monday Night Football play.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Mike, Kevin, how are you guys doing? How are you guys doing with this?
It's been tough. I'm not ashamed to admit, on Monday night I was crying. I felt out of it. I stayed up the entire night watching stuff, and then Tuesday was just a complete rut. I know it's odd. We don't know Damar personally. We're not family or friends, but in this community, and I would say most NFL fans, you feel like you're part of the team. And when something happens to one of your players, it really was emotional. And I think really what got to me was the thought that we might have just seen a player die on national television in front of all of us. And there was an incident with the Sabres where a Sabres opponent in the past in 2008 had a near scare, and this one hit home just as much as that one. And yeah, just getting back, but the first 2 days were definitely a rut.
Yeah, Mark, it was tough. I mean, I think you kind of feel dirty in a way of like, we're enjoying this product and this entertainment factor, and it's just like for our enjoyment, and we forget the human element of it, and we cover it, and we say, Deion Dawkins said it best, we're first to mention bad plays or fumbles or missed tackles, missed coverage assignments, missed blocks. But we're watching this for our enjoyment, and there's a human element to it, this sport, and you learn that in a blunt of a second, just like one quick, like right in front of you, the situation was just as horrifying as imaginable. And just watching them there, we weren't there, watching not only the team and the paramedics and just performing CPR. And it's a good time to mention, like, CPR saves lives. Like, it just does in any situation, whether it's athletic competition or school, if you're a teacher, or even in your workplace. Like, CPR is the reason that we're talking about a better outcome here today. So if you have a minute, there is zero reason that you shouldn't learn it. You can quite literally save a life. And the Bills' assistant trainer was the one that actually performed the CPR as a hero and was able to get to the outcomes that we might be at today. So, Mark, it's been hard. It's tough, like, for the first time really in my modern, really maybe ever watching sports, maybe for many people ever, that it's like, it's not important. Like, sure, there's been small instances of that at times, maybe 9/11, maybe other times throughout our history. But right then, you just to see that certain play and just the way it went down was, I think, just horrifying for fans, to the point where, the president's talking about it, to where people that don't watch football are talking about it. I think that the NFL has that type of reach as an entertainment industry.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, similar to Mike, I don't think I was okay until today. When we got the press conference at the hospital, and we started to get the reporting before that he was awake, that he was responsive, that he asked about who won. I mean, I that got me. Mike said, you shed some tears on that. Got to me. I shed some tears when I heard that part of it. It's been a tough week. I'm incredibly grateful for, obviously assistant trainer Danny Callenton and what he's done. I'm warmed by the idea that there's been sort of what you were just saying, Kevin, this acknowledgement of learn CPR. I saw Joe Marino, for example, he talked about that on his show. It's something that, like, look, I've put on it's like moved to the top of my to-do list. I've been heartened to see, for example, the Saints and the Pelicans just bought a bunch of defibrillators to put at recreation centers. As somebody that, I coached basketball. I coached middle school basketball last night, and it's like walking to a gym for the first time because it's a new gym we hadn't been to. It's like, where's the AED? Like, do I know what I'm doing? So I think, in what could have been a horrific circumstance has seemingly turned for the better. And I think an awareness of, what people can do to prevent situations like this from going down a darker road by learning CPR, by understanding procedures like that, I think is a nice positive outcome of this. And obviously, look, Damar's health and well-being, that matters most. And the news that he's responsive, the news that he seems to be, as the doctors put it, neurologically intact, that his lungs are healing, man, that's incredible. And we're slowly getting back to talking about football, and I know we're going to talk about this game, but that doesn't matter right now. Damar's health and safety matters more than anything. And obviously the outpouring of support, the GoFundMe. I mean, I know we're all sort of waiting to hear his response when he hears that part of it. And that's probably going to shed some more tears, at least on my end.
Yeah, as you said, Chasing M Foundation, $2,500 was what he was looking for Christmas to raise for his toy drive at his mom's daycare center. And the story is wonderful. We talked about it, Mark, the ability to go check out Ty Dunn's piece on Damar Hamlin on his website. Tells his backstory, where he's from, what he's gone through, his energy, like going 50 offers and going to Pitt. To stay closer to home, and just the incredible story of him and what he's been able to do, and now, really impact the community with, seemingly $7+ million and growing, that the entire community, the entire country came together to show their love and support for the situation, and just the outpouring of support at UC's medical center, all the support of cards and flowers, and from Brandon Bean, who is still there, to T. Higgins, who's taken it hard, and others I'm assuming are present there. And Mark, before you said today, I was 50-50 if the Bills would play this game. I didn't know that they would. I think that they would have potentially said gladly, if you got to we'll take the no decision on the first game. If you got to forfeit this one, so be it, until we hear more news. So I wasn't sure until maybe the last 12 hours if they'd play this.
I honestly wasn't sure until I saw that. Look, I am a Patriots fan, but the images from practice today in Buffalo, a thumbs up from Josh Allen, seeing the guys smiling again. I wasn't sure until I saw that there'd be a game, even with the great news that we get today about, Damar's condition and how he seems to be improving. And, Josh Allen said today that, look, they're ready. There's a game to play. They've got a job to do. I cannot imagine that, but the amount of respect I have for that team right now, for Coach McDermott, I mean, Zach Taylor too, but the way those two coaches handled that situation Monday night, so much goes into coaching, but the ability to lead in a moment of uncertainty, to lead in uncharted waters like those two men did that night was phenomenal. To see Coach McDermott open up, be emotional today, talk about, it's strong to get help and things like that is incredibly powerful. So again, like you, Kevin, I wasn't sure until really 4:30 this afternoon or so that there'd be a game. And I think, it's nice that we could start to turn the page on this. Again, Damar is always in our thoughts. But to have a game to talk about and to, in a sense, feel like it's okay to talk about football again. It was hard, when it was like, should we write about this? Should we talk about this? What should we do? It's what we do. It's what we do professionally. It's been tough. So it's nice to be able to sort of feel like we can talk about it again, and it's okay to talk about it again. Again, Damar is always first and foremost, in our minds right now, but we do have a game. Does look like it's going to be played. There's some news that's coming out in the past couple of minutes about what could happen seeding wise, AFC championship wise. No decisions have been made, but a tweet from Adam Schefter saying a neutral site AFC championship game is on the table. But it's nice that we're starting to talk about football again.
Yeah, it sure is.
And I got a few points here, so I'm sorry if I'm a little long-winded with it, but to go back to the foundation, that was something that he started while at Pitt, just trying to raise $2,500. So it kind of reveals how much of a heart he had even at that point when he didn't have much money to still try to do something for his community. Got to 10,000. If once he finds out that amount, that's going to be an unbelievable feeling, just to know how many people he's going to be able to help out as a result of this. In one thing that we haven't addressed today, I am so appreciative of Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills for kind of bringing up that mental health really does matter. It's not something that you can just dismiss. These players, like I said earlier in the show, they are gladiators on the field, but they still go through the same pain that all of us were experience. And I'm glad that in the end, they are trying to do what's right for these guys. The first decision that was proper was canceling the game and just not playing. But then to hold off on practice, to hold off on them speaking about it, offering them help. And then, like you said, today was really the changing point when they got the positive news. And when Sean McDermott first came to Buffalo, he was a man that preached culture. And a lot of people here laughed it off. They thought it was just another coach trying to just bring up a point, kind of focus too much on it. And then they started winning and people started embracing the culture. But true culture is shown during times of adversity. And this is, we've talked about the Buffalo community, all the things that have happened in this city in the past year, the Buffalo shooting, the two weather events, even Kim Pagula who we still don't know her health situation since her scare last year. Dawson Knox having his brother pass away. And this team has had to battle through so much. And to be 12-3 and to still even have the heart to continue, really, you need to have a strong culture. And I commend Sean McDermott for putting that all together. And the last thing I'll say before tossing it over, it has been weird this week because obviously Damar Hamlin's health is first and foremost. That's the only thing that matters. Unfortunately, we know the NFL is a business and things have to go on, and we're going to have to make that transition. And it's been difficult to know when to make that transition. Some people tried to make that transition too early, Skip Bayless, and they got the deserved backlash for doing that. But as we get into it, it is a game that's going to have playoff implications. New England win and get in. The Bills will be battling for seeding. How the NFL decides to handle all of this, it has the potential to impact 8 different teams. Now that we know it's a no contest, that's the first step. But you're talking about Baltimore impacted, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Buffalo, New England, even potentially if how they would have decided that game, if say it was a loss or a tie or a win, could impact Pittsburgh and Jacksonville, depending on some wild card situations. So just a crazy sequence. But now I think with the good news, we can finally transition a little bit to it. Sorry for the long-winded stuff, but just I've never gone through this before, so a lot of stuff to get out.
No, yeah. I know, and I appreciate you saying all that, and you're Mike, and you're absolutely right. I mean, this has been, again, outside observer, a very traumatic year for Buffalo. All the events that have happened in the greater Buffalo area that you sort of mentioned, it's incredible the strength in this community that, again, observing from afar, in sort of moments that will sear in my brain, the image of Burrow and Allen hugging. I'm never going to forget that. I mean, there are a lot of images from Monday night that will stick with all of us, I'm sure. But that one is something that I will never forget. And again, thankfully, it seems like, we are going to get a good result out of this, given what it could have been. But I think it was just, we've had a lot of reminders as sort of a global human community of the fleeting nature of life over the past 2-3 years. And it seems like, again, over and over, we're showing images like this or other events in our lives or other events that we're living through that remind us how quickly things can change. And going into this game on Monday night, I remember at dinner time talking with my son, my daughter, and my wife about it's going to be a really good game. It's going to be awesome. We're going to sit together and watch it as a family. And it changes like that. And in an instant, that part doesn't matter. None of it matters. It's this young man's health, this team, this community, his family, and hoping for the best possible result. And it seems like thanks to the brilliance of the people that responded on the field, in the hospital, we are going to get a good result for that. And we thank God for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the outcomes are just statistically 3 to 25% based on response time in a tragic incident like that. And it seems like we might get on the better end of that, those outcomes. So that is a wonderful thing to hear. And to sum it all up, we all learned something. We all learned to put CPR in the front of it. We, wherever we can with our machines and making sure they're ready to go in certain athletic situations or schools or anywhere. I mean, businesses maybe even now should consider these situations. So there was a lot to learn about compassion, and it was great to see 2 leaders from 2 top teams that had everything to play for say that this really doesn't matter. Like, Cincinnati was up in the game. They could have cared. They could have pressed it. They could have said, we had a great game plan today. We were focused. This is the most electric our stadium's ever been. They could have pressed the issue. Sure. I mean, but to see the compassion and what the both teams are able to do, and Burrow go into the Bills locker room with the captains, and the scene of Trey White bawling, and just some of those stuff you'll just from kid to, teenager to adult. I think you just will always remember that scene in a professional sports game of what everybody had to go through. And then, you had Mitch Morse with Trey White. It was just a scene that, you may never, hopefully never
even
see
Dane
again.
Jackson,
Right.
Even Dane Jackson helping
Yeah.
Damar Hamlin's mother get down onto the field. One of the Bills beat reporters, Sal Capaccio, was talking on WGR 550 the other day about how he saw a woman going down to the first row with a lot of concern, and eventually hearing her say that she was Damar Hamlin's mom trying to get on the field. And Sal was really emotional. He was definitely tearing up while he was saying this, but concerned seeing her son on the field with all this care and not knowing what was going on. And you hear a story like that and it gets to you because you're like, I can't even imagine. I don't even have kids. And I can't imagine if that was someone that was close to me. And then Dane, having been a teammate of Damar's in college, now in Buffalo, actually had one of the security people help the mom be able to get there so she could be with him. And I'm sorry, it's touching, it's emotional, it gets to you because we never really think about the human element, and that really touched me. And like you guys said, Joe Burrow, the Cincinnati organization, just I can't give them enough credit because I don't know, like I said earlier, if that would have been the case 20, 30 years ago. And everybody did the right stuff. I've known Joe. I know I've told people my connections to Joe Burrow, having known who he was since he was a freshman in high school. He grew up in a football family, but in a very poor community. And he is one of the most humble people that is actually really connected to like deeper things. When he spoke about when he won the Heisman Trophy, he spoke about Athens, and that poor community had hundreds of thousands of dollars raised for it because of what he said. So when I see Joe Burrow out there embracing Josh Allen and having the captains go to Buffalo's locker room, that is a guy that was feeling the same pain. He might have not have bet on the Bills, but he was genuinely caring for his friend and his competitors. And we're lucky. This is 3 days later and we got good news. Thank God, because if it didn't go out that way, I don't even know. First of all, I don't think we would be talking today. And second of all, I don't even know how we would be going on talking about football the rest of January had we not gotten the good news that we have.
Absolutely. Mark, you brought up a good point. The NFL has said this game will not go on between the Bills and the Bengals. That has been canceled with a no contest. What is being considered now, and it's a litany of live on the show on a litany of potential new rules. I'm assuming these are more than not official, but trending close to it, would be the ability for based on the scenarios of the outcomes of these games. The Bills would be against the Chiefs if the Bills beat the Patriots and the Chiefs win as well, that they would have the ability to then have a neutral site AFC Championship game. And if the Bills and the Chiefs lose and the Bengals win, then the Bengals can work themselves into this neutral site. And we'll have to, read through and pick through the details of like different scenarios and what this means. But Mike, that's like a half version of the loss column affecting this. It's not quite the full honoring like both teams would get a win in that game, but it's not just straight win percentage. So, Mark, what are your initial reactions looking at this from someone, that not overly impacted by the ruling? What do you think of that potential decision?
Well, it's good that it seems like the league, first of all, is not forcing Buffalo and Cincinnati to play that game, because that was a big thing in my mind. How could you force these two teams to pick this game up where it left off? I couldn't imagine a scenario we're going to tell the Buffalo Bills go back to that stadium and play a game a week later or 2 weeks later. And as we heard other scenarios, a week 19 game between Buffalo and Cincinnati coupled with NFC wild cards or pushing things back, this idea to, declare that game a no contest, and we'll figure out how to construct the playoff seeding from there. I appreciate that approach. I think it's the most respectful one. And, looking at the scenarios as they are, I mean, I think it's a reasonable compromise to have a potential Buffalo Kansas City championship game on a neutral site, and I would say have any neutral site you pick Pittsburgh, put that AFC championship game in Pittsburgh and have it in Damar Hamlin's, hometown
think of that.
where he played college. And, it would be an opportunity to, again, sort of in a way celebrate, and that's probably not the right word, but acknowledge that we have got a good result from Damar Hamlin's medical emergency. And it's a way to sort of pay tribute to who this player was, who he was growing up, who he was in college. So whether it's the Bengals, if one of these three teams are involved in an AFC championship game and you want to put it at a neutral site, put it in Pittsburgh.
I've been thinking if they do that, I was going to guess Indianapolis just because
it's very central, right, Mike?
Central.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's just guessing. No one has any insight. The other possibility that was discussed, and we will get to the Patriots very quickly, so was that they could possibly give the 1 seed the option of choosing a bye or home field advantage, which brings some strategy into it. I think the consensus of the Cover 1 team was you choose the bye because there are no gimme wins in the playoffs.
Right.
And that gets you you could still have the possibility of having a home AFC championship, even in that scenario, if Buffalo loses before then. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that is a reasonable thing to bring up, or is it getting a little too gimmicky when you get to that point?
I mean, I think it's an interesting approach. I saw Adam Schefter was talking about that idea. I think it's, it does add a layer of strategy to it. And we are in that sort of schedule and time of year where teams are starting to think about, okay, do we sit people? Do we not? So there is strategy that's going to be playing out around the NFL this weekend anyway. And I kind of think it's an interesting thing to introduce in a unique set of circumstances, that little element. I also come down on the side of the bye week. It's January now. Nobody's 100%. Give yourself that week to heal physically. Again, get yourself a round deeper because, yes, you might have, home field advantage throughout, but we've seen Tennessee last year, the first overall seed, lose, at home to the Cincinnati Bengals. And so get yourself one step closer, get yourself a week rested up. So if they decide that's the approach they go, it doesn't look like it from this statement from the league, but had they gone that route, I'd say, yeah, take the bye.
Yeah, for sure. Mark, as we kind of break down the last element of this, how about the scenario of the Bengals? If they do lose to Baltimore, they would have lost twice, and the league is going to do a coin flip on the location because the probability is that they would match up in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, that's Friday Night Lights, right? Like a coin flip in the parking lot in the middle of the night.
Who's flipping it? Yeah,
who's flipping it and all that stuff. Like, you're gonna have a designated flipper. I mean, but look, the league is trying their best to accommodate. Again, I've used this phrase far too often this week, but uncharted territory, right? We're in a unique set of circumstances, and I think having spun through this breakdown, it seems like a reasonable approach to things, even if it comes down to a coin flip, because it's not like we're going to tell a team based on a coin flip, you're not in, right? It's not that kind of scenario. It's a where games going to be played kind of scenario. So, what if one's going to be at one side, one's going to be another based on a coin flip? I think we can live with that given everything we've seen this past week.
And now we get to the Patriots side of it, where beyond all of this, the Patriots are in a win and get in week 18 game, which feels pretty remarkable after how the season has gone with the ups and downs, and then getting the victory last week over Miami to force this situation. What is the vibe around the Patriots right now? Is there a sense of confidence? Obviously, the Patriots have not done well against the Bills in recent years. Do you I hate asking this, but do you think what the Bills have gone through and the emotional toll that they will have been through, do you think that will hurt the Patriots overall? Will it have any impact, or is it just not something that you would think about?
I mean, I think before I came on, I saw a Bills fan suggest that, pregame, instead of introducing players, you introduce the medical staff and the training staff. And that got me thinking about what that atmosphere is going to be like on Sunday. And I think it will be an emotionally charged atmosphere. And I think that, look, that will benefit the Bills at the start of the game. But I think you get first play. And as an aside, that first snap of football, I guess we'll see it Saturday between Kansas City and Las Vegas. That's going to be a sort of lump in the throat moment, I think, for a lot of people, myself included. We'll get through that and we'll get back to, okay, we're watching football again. But that's going to be a lump in the throat moment. That first snap between these two teams on Sunday is going to be a lump in the throat moment. And I think Buffalo, the crowd, the environment, there will be an energy to that. I think you get a couple of plays into it, though, it's going to be a game of football. As to where the Patriots are right now, Matt, you said it. It's been an up and down year. I mean, if you had asked me this 2 weeks ago when they had that loss to the Raiders and how that game went down, I said there's no way this team's going to have a chance to get in the final week of the season. To have a chance to steal one against Cincinnati and fumble that away at the end, I said there's no way this team's going to have a chance to get in. They've got themselves a chance. There's a scenario where, they get in with a loss, which is possible. If Jacksonville wins, Miami loses, Pittsburgh loses, they get in with a loss. They've got themselves a chance. That's the best way I can put it. Because on paper, the Buffalo Bills are the better team. As I've said, when I've been on with you guys, 3 times last year, earlier this year, the Bills are the better team. As far as what Monday night might do to this Bills team, I think it might galvanize them even more. When you hear, when Damar's family spoke to the team, it said, go out and he wants you guys to go play. That's going to inspire this team, and as well it should. And, I certainly think that on paper, the Bills are the better team. I think the Patriots might still get in because of the scenarios that could play out in Miami, between the Steelers and the Browns. But the Patriots still have a lot of things to work on. They've got some guys that are banged up that are dealing with concussions, guys like Marcus Jones. Patriots have been very careful with head injuries in the past and in this season. So we might not see some guys that, back in week 13, Marcus Jones was their biggest offensive spark, a rookie cornerback. And when your biggest offensive spark is a rookie cornerback, that tells you where a team is right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting point of view. And I did notice that the injury report, and it does seem Belichick and the team does err, like we saw. We've seen Parker out for a while after that scary incident. We've seen, Mills not play. So like, what's your overall from a football perspective? Are the Patriots bringing in, like, stakes aside, are they bringing in their A team in your opinion? Like Jacoby Myers, I saw make that touchdown catch and come down on his shoulder again. What are we going to see from the health of the Patriots?
I mean, I think, the injuries, a lot of the injuries, the Parker injury is one. Again, that was a head injury a couple of weeks ago that, again, we're seeing them take a cautious approach with. But then you've got, like you said, Mills and Jones. I think those are the guys that you're certainly – I don't think it's likely you're going to see those guys. The head injuries, I think they've been so cautious with those over the course of this year. I mean, Parker went out weeks ago, and we still really haven't seen him, still limited in practice. Gottschall was out today, but that was an illness. I'd expect he'll be ready to go. Jacoby Myers has been playing with that shoulder injury for weeks now. He re-aggravated it on that goal line touchdown against Miami last week. I'd expect him to be back. But Jones, Jonnu Smith, Devontae Parker, those are injuries that I think, because of the nature of those, I'm not inclined to believe they'll be back. Mills is tough because it's a groin. Corners, chest, groin injuries and things like that, tough to sort of work through. They might try to give it a go with him, but he could be limited. They're a banged up team, but everybody's banged up right now. It's week 18. You've got injuries. It's part of the game. They're going to work through it the best they can.
Yeah.
Obviously, the last time these two teams played on Thursday Night Football, the Patriots' strategy on offense was short, quick passes, try to get yards after catch. Hopefully the Bills continue their poor tackling, which has been an issue for Buffalo this year, didn't work out. Outside of the long touchdown,
which had missed tackles.
It was a long day. Do you, with all the things that you just mentioned, do you see the Patriots changing things up much heading into this game, or is it just try the same thing again and hope for better results? Because it seems like they're in a tough situation with what they're going through right now.
Yeah, they're in a tough situation, Mike. What's worked for them week 16, week 17, they found a little bit more in the downfield passing game. The problem is you sometimes need time to do that. And Mac Jones, his numbers pressured when non-pressured this year. Adjusted completion percentage of 55.3% when pressured this year, according to PFF. That's 33rd out of 37 qualified passers. But yet when he's kept clean, it's 79.1%, which is 14th out of the 37 qualified passers. And so they've got to keep him clean. His numbers when blitzed, 60% adjusted completion percentage when blitzed this year. That's 41 out of 42. He's really struggled with pressure. Now, interestingly enough, the Bills blitzed him. I went back and watched it this afternoon. They blitzed him just 4 times, and he was 3 for 3, including that Marcus Jones touchdown. But they also did get a sack on him. They really just sort of said, look, we're not going to blitz him too much. We'll get pressure with 4, we'll do other things, and we'll let him take these quick throws because we'll rally, we'll tackle, we'll do things like that. When I was on with you guys before that week 13 game, I said they were struggling to find an identity in the passing game. I think they've kind of done that over the past couple of weeks. They've managed to get some plays downfield. They've got, Tyquan Thornton involved. They've been using Kendrick Bourne a little bit more, which Patriots fans have been clamoring for weeks. Now, part of that might have been the Parker injury, Myers being banged up a little bit. You got to get some more guys in the lineup, but those guys offer some speed, some playmaking ability. So, it wouldn't surprise me to see those guys be involved even more on Sunday. But it's been it's the end of an up and down season. It's been an up and down year. It's in some ways I've seen some people say that, look, this might've been Belichick's best coaching job ever. The fact that this team still has a shot at week 18, just because of everything that they've gone through on the sort of offensive coaching staff side of the ball, with Patricia calling plays, with a sort of step back from Mac Jones and things like that. I think there are other much better picks for coach of the year. Let's just put it that way. But it's an up and down year. It's been an up and down season. I'm not expecting much from this team on Sunday. Yeah, they got a shot, but I wouldn't bet on them. Let's put it that way.
I have a dumb question before I'll let.
There are no dumb questions, Mike. There are no dumb questions.
No. This is probably a pretty dumb question, especially for a coach that has 6 Super Bowl championships with the Patriots. Are the Patriots do they have that Pittsburgh Steelers type quality where you go into this year, you don't know what to really expect? You think, well, if their defense is great and Mac Jones can put something together, maybe they can find a way to get 10 wins. Then there's another part of you that's like, maybe they're a 5-12 team. At the end of the year, they're 8-8, battling for a playoff spot the last week of the season. Last year, obviously, they made it. 2 years ago, it was a struggle, but they still found a way. I think, what was it, 7 wins in 2020, right around that mark. So is it to the point where maybe Belichick and the Patriots are kind of too good for their own cause, meaning this would have been the year to maybe have a worse record, get a higher draft pick, and capitalize, not battle for the playoff spot late. Not saying that you shouldn't compete, but Buffalo, during the drought, we were known for having 7-9 seasons where we would bust our butt to get wins that just didn't matter. And it almost seems like Belichick is almost too good to have that horrible season. And kind of like Pittsburgh, you would have thought 4 or 5 games into the year, Pittsburgh was toast, and now here you have them technically alive. I know this is kind of dumb. I did preface it that it would be a weird question. But
again, Mike, there are no dumb questions. I mean, I think you might be onto something here, and that, so much more goes into coaching than just X's and O's. Sort of like we were talking about with Sean McDermott earlier in the show. With Mike Tomlin down in Pittsburgh, for example, that was a roster that going into the year, so many different websites and outlets said, look, Pittsburgh was one of the weaker rosters in the NFL. And here we are, week 18, they got a shot. It's a slim shot, but they got a shot. Nobody expected that. It's not like Kenny Pickett has been great, but Tomlin has shown some patience with him, and he's come through with some clutch plays in the fourth quarter of some games, the game against Baltimore this past week, for example. Although I still think he wasn't throwing to Najee Harris. I think he was throwing to the receiver, not Harris, on that touchdown, but he's too smart to admit that he wasn't doing that. But I think that they've shown, in Pittsburgh, like that willingness to, that ability of Tomlin to inspire that team to play above what their sort of Madden rankings might be or something like that. And I think something similar sort of played out in New England because, going into this year, you thought, the defense was going to be good. What are we going to see from Mac Jones in year 2? What's this offense going to look like? They've changed so much. You've got Matt Patricia, who's never called plays in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball before. There's been a lot of just bad offensive structure, design, execution that has plagued this offense and this team really, all season long. But the fact that, similar to Pittsburgh, they're still in week 18 with a chance to get in sort of speaks to, the ability of Belichick to squeeze as much as he can out of the lemon and get as much out of it as he can. To the other sort of underlying framework of your question, which was, would this have been a better year to sort of finish 5-12 and get a draft pick? Maybe. But the draft is such a toss of the coin anyway. Why not get yourself in and give yourself a puncher's chance? Maybe, even if they do get in, whether a win or a back end situation, I don't anticipate them making a run, but you give yourself a shot.
Yeah. I'll answer it from my perspective. I would win. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The playoffs are hard to come by. The Bills, obviously, during their drought, there wasn't 7, so they didn't have as many opportunities. I still think it would have said only one year they could have potentially broken the drought.
And I agree too. And my point wasn't necessarily losing on purpose. It's almost
right.
The ability to still find a way to be competitive at the end of the year, in spite of almost the odds stacked against you, a roster that's not. Where you have rosters sometimes that underperform, it seems like he's always going to get that 8-8, 9-8 type season, regardless of who he has. You could give him the most random collection of players in the league. He's going to find a way to go at least 500 or better.
Yeah. I think that's right.
Yeah, and there might be more something to say the Patriots do lose to the Bills and they're 8-9 and they don't make the playoffs, and that is a record that kills you. That's not ideal. You're kind of sitting there. It's a tougher draft spot. Like, you are in the Bills drought range, not that the Patriots are, but you are in the Bills drought range of what they would do historically, traditionally in that realm. And the Jets are kind of sitting there, but they've got some good skill players and some young players, and the Dolphins are muddling around in there right now, so they can't figure this thing out either. But Mark, I got to ask you, I brought up this proposition, want to know what you think from a Patriots perspective. I said 10 men on the field to start the game for the Bills defense, with the Bills safety spot being not there. What is your perspective from a Patriots side? What would Belichick do if that was the case?
I would be shocked if that didn't happen. For the Buffalo Bills first defensive snap. And I am sure that, I know, Coach Belichick said today that he's reached out to Sean McDermott, and he kind of, didn't want to dive into it in details, but it would stun me if something like that didn't happen. And again, look, the imagery, just the thought in my mind of, Buffalo kicking off to open that game, Patriots offense, first offensive snap of the game, and you've just got the 10 men on the field and the defensive side of the ball. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I think that is, and I saw when you said that, Kevin, and I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely how this game should start. on the first defensive snap for the Buffalo Bills with 10 men on the field. I think it's completely appropriate. I would be surprised if it doesn't happen that way. And I guarantee Bill Belichick would want to be, would sign off on that and say, yeah, we'll decline the penalty. Whatever you guys want to do, whatever you guys need to do, we are 100% on board with.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did have some Bills fans still completely traumatized and think that Bill Belichick would then throw a deep pass, a deep out, a deep fly.
No, I mean, what's been interesting, and Coach Belichick talked a lot today. He went in detail about, what they've done, and he's talked about how, he had Matthew Slater lead the team in prayer. He's taken a lot of leadership from, Troy Brown and other, veterans or younger coaches about, how to handle this situation. And I'm sure that discussions like this have happened within, the New England locker room because, he talked to himself about how, this is a moment that reminded us the human nature of life, of this sport, of, and he spoke at length about what players are willing to do and to basically put themselves at risk for by playing this game and how much respect he has for the players that suit up and play football at the NFL level, at the college level. And so for Bills fans, it might be traumatizing. No, he's going to have Mac throw deep on that. I understand. Look, it's the hoodie. He's the Darth Vader of the NFL. I get it. I understand why there might be some reservations, but Belichick, if that were to be the way the game opened, he's going to go right along with it.
And Belichick still has a human side. I think people forget that. Obviously, with the media and his persona, he has that little bit Darth Vader, evil genius type thing going on. But you could probably go further on this than I could allude to. But I feel like he's a person where with his players and personal life, there is a much more human side to him that he just doesn't want out there. Whether
he's a very stoic guy from a football family. Obviously, his father Steve Belichick, a longtime coach and scout. But there is a warm human side to him. I mean, just look up the video of Randy Moss invited them to the Halloween party the year they had the bye. He showed up dressed like a pirate and he's on roller skates, and talking about how much he loves Halloween. Again, as I said earlier, all the reminders we've had over the past 2-3 years of, the sort of fleeting nature of life, he's cognizant of that too. I mean, we had Mike Leach a couple of weeks ago. We had Grant Wall, the incredible soccer writer at the World Cup. I mean, we've had, obviously the Buffalo community and what the Buffalo community has gone through over the past year. It's been a lot. And I'm sure that if given that opportunity, Bill Belichick would, completely honor however Buffalo wants to approach that first defensive snap.
Yeah, it's a good perspective. And I agree. He's a historian. He's a respectful of the game. He loves baseball. He'll start answering random baseball questions, which I always think is funny, like breaking down what he thinks of a certain stat or historic run or Jaron Judge or whatever it might be.
Ask him a lacrosse question sometime, then he'll really go nuts.
Yeah.
I have long maintained his dream job whenever he retires as the coach of the Patriots is to coach lacrosse, either at the Naval Academy or our alma mater, Wesleyan University. Like, that's where he's going to end up.
Hey, did you know Chris Hogan played lacrosse?
That's why you loved it. There you go, right?
It works. That's why I gave him an offer sheet.
Every broadcast.
It works. It works. Mark, what do you anticipate seeing from the Patriots this week? Do you think they get it done? They get in the playoffs and then potentially set up the same game? Would be likely, I guess. I think the Bengals could oversee them. Then you'd have the switch of a Bengal. You would go to Cincinnati.
I think New England gets in, but I don't think they get in with a win. Like I think that I like that. Miami's down to Skylar Thompson, and
Mike Glennon,
and Mike Glennon potentially off the bench. And look, I know that obviously the Jets season is what it is, but that defense I think is good enough to perhaps Jets could still win there. Cleveland, Pittsburgh, maybe
Cleveland's probably the better team. If we're being
Cleveland's
real.
Probably the better team. So maybe Cleveland wins that, and then provided Jacksonville wins on Saturday night, New England gets into a loss. Like I think that's I honestly feel like that's more likely a scenario than
so
New
you're
England
talking
win
Bills
this game.
Patriots back here.
So then it would be Bills
next
Patriots
week.
back to back. Yeah.
That would be something. That is the rare
Sixth time in 2 years.
That's got to be close to a record.
And not just
it's got to be
back-to-back games and then back-to-back postseason.
I can't imagine that's happened too often.
Yeah,
that would be wild.
Yeah,
it's something that the Bills have to consider with their run, and back-to-back teams is never easy ever. Like in any sport, in any tradition, like it's just a hard thing to do. So I don't know if that'll be through the Bills had it all, like with their game plan and their calling and what they're going to do, knowing that there is winning or losing. There's a scenario where see these guys in as little as 6 days, I guess, they're Saturday games.
Well, you would think New England would have, and obviously this is just generalities I'm throwing out there, but you would think that New England would have to throw out everything this week. They're trying to get the win just to make
yeah. Not in the New England for sure.
If there is a possibility of this happening, the Bills, if they feel comfortable enough that they can win, I mean, maybe they can hold back.
New England has a chance to play Cincy if they win, because that would flip the seeding. So they're not necessarily sure who, especially with a win. I mean, they would go to Cincinnati where they played well.
This game makes an impact too.
Yeah, sure. They would know that before the game, just like they would know the Jacksonville results too. So they would know those before the game, that where I guess they could find themselves and with a win would be going to Cincinnati in a game they should have won, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah.
That Stevenson shouldn't fumble. I mean, that's just horrific luck. But the momentum, we saw worse calls in different games with this momentum. The officiating at some points is interesting, Mark. But what do you think happens in this game? I appreciate you staying late and through these circumstances of
I mean,
here.
I think this is like a 23-13. That's the number I wrote down. I think Buffalo wins this game. I know I think 6.5 was the number I saw. I think they cover that. They're the better team. We've seen that over the past 5 meetings between these two teams, right? Like even the wind game, it was clear who the better team was. New England still got some things to figure out. And, like we sort of talked about, I think there will be an element of, what we saw Monday night in this Buffalo Bills team coming together. I don't think that would be the reason, that the Bills win the game, but I think it's going to be a powerful environment and a powerful start to this game. But I just think, bottom line, Bills are the better team.
It's interesting. Yeah, that's definitely a good perspective, Mark. There's still a chance we'll see you for a third week in a row. And we'll probably next week, if this happens, get into some more football discussions and what you see from Mac and his future and how they could go ahead and actually take a win in Buffalo next week, because there's a possibility of this scenario.
There is.
I think it's 30% at the last odds I looked, the Bills' first matchup being the Patriots. So there is this possibility. The other odd for the Bills is the Ravens. That's another possibility for them with a loss. They would see Baltimore most likely. So Patriots, Baltimore, the most likely, and bye, I guess, is still in the run. I don't know. The odds haven't adjusted since the non-decision. But those were the 3 most likely scenarios: by Patriots and Ravens. So we'll see. It's probably going to be even higher than 30% once this readjusts to factor in that recently announced no decision. I'm going to put it 40% roughly that these teams play again. So Mark, we have a 4 in 10 chance we see next
I'm
week.
looking forward to it already, Freds.
I love it. I think it's good for the league to have this over, I don't know. I think it's better than a Pittsburgh matchup per se, or Jacksonville. So I'm interested in it, Mark. Really, thank you for your thoughts and your, kind words around it, and your, emotional statements as well. That means a lot to Bills fans. And it's going to be a really great atmosphere at Highmark Stadium here to see this game. Like Josh and Sean McDermott put it, it's going to be a charged atmosphere, and we'll see what that amounts to. A lot on the line, maybe even more for New England. I still think it's cool to make back-to-back playoff appearances for anybody. So a lot on the line. Like you said, you can go on a run. They're good enough defensively. They have a good enough coach.
You got a shot.
Did they beat Kansas City? They almost beat Cincinnati, though.
Give yourself a puncher's chance this time of year. That's all you can ask for.
That's all you can ask for. And I think that there's a possibility. It's not a shoo-in that you're just going to roll over the Patriots with Bill Belichick. just because they're the 7, you're the 2. So there's definitely a lot to and I might even be rooting for New England as long as it's not against the Bills. I'll probably be rooting for them to beat Cincinnati or Kansas City.
There you go.
That environment. So Mark, thank you so much for coming on. What are you working on? What do you got going on here for the rest of the week?
Well, I'll probably write something on this game tomorrow. That's kind of what I was thinking about doing. I might do something on the Packers-Lions game. But guys, I'm glad to hear that you guys are well. Kevin, we talked offline. Obviously Damar, his family are in all of our thoughts and prayers. I'm glad to hear you guys are doing well. I'm glad we're getting some good news out of Damar and his situation at UCMC. And best of luck, guys. Maybe I'll see you in a week.
Yeah, we'll see a 4 in 10 chance. Yeah. We'll see the odds.
There we go.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
You too. See you later.
You too,
Mark. So Mike, great as always, wonderful perspective from the New England sideline, and his experience covering the sport, as well as quarterbacks, and his perspective watching the game with his family as well on Monday Night Football. Mike, it's time for us to do score predictions. I've already put mine out on Twitter, and I'm going to stick with it. So I'll go first for once in my life. I got 33-3 Bills over the Patriots. I think they'll come emotionally charged. It doesn't have anything to do with the Patriots. It could be the Jags. It could be the Jets. I don't think this necessarily matters. I don't see an environment to where the Bills come out and lay an egg. Anything's possible with this environment that something like that could happen. Heck, the Bills could decide that they're going to play some backups throughout this game. I don't know. I don't anticipate that, especially if Kansas City wins, Mike. Could the Bills decide we're not playing for a ton here? Let's roll. Let's make sure we're safe and healthy going into the playoffs. I don't anticipate that. This game means too much to show Damar and his family what this means to the city. And those threes were wild. For sure in the Sabres game with Tage Thompson's 3 goals, 3 minutes in, third hat trick of the season. So I'm just sticking threes wild. I don't have a plan how they get the 33 yet. Maybe they even knee on it late in the game for an extra point or something. But I got 33-3 in this game, and I feel pretty good about it. Yes, odds would say that they're not going to win by 30, but they've done it in the playoffs before with everything on the line. And the Bills, if Kansas City loses, Mike, I really believe in that prediction at that point. But what do you got?
So first off, that would be wild if the Bills knock off the Patriots. That would be the second time in 3 years that the Bills have knocked off a division opponent out of the playoffs in a win and get in scenario, which is all those years of missing the playoffs. This feels good if they are able to do that. I'm going to go 24-17. I feel confident about this game. Vegas, though, is rarely ever off by a ton. I feel like the 6.5 points is close. And
going down, it started at 8.5.
Which is interesting to me. I don't know. Is that line going down because Vegas is unsure where the Bills' mindset is going to be, where they're going to be at? It'll be interesting the next day or two. Will that line go back up now that the Bills have had some good news?
I think so.
With Damar Hamlin. The main reason I have the low-scoring game is that the Patriots have a good defense. They're able to slow teams down, and I think McDermott realizes when you play the Patriots, you have to be able to run the ball and be able to control the clock and limit your mistakes. Because making mistakes against a team like New England is really the only way with Mac Jones that they're going to be able to put up a lot of points. So I think we're going to have a similar approach to what we saw when the Bills were at Foxborough on Thursday Night Football, where they're going to want to be aggressive on the line and try to take it to New England following a good Chicago game where they were able to really run it at the Bears. I could also see a scenario, like you said, where the Bills, they're playing emotionally charged and they just tear New England apart. But this game does matter to the Patriots. And like you said, what will be interesting with the Bills and their mentality in this game is are they going to know prior to the game what is going to happen with that 1 seed? Obviously, if Kansas City loses, you're playing for that 1 seed, win and get the bye and home field advantage. But are they going to know if Kansas City wins, if there is a scenario where it is a neutral AFC Championship, or if they do have a chance for the 1 seed. One thing that you and I have talked a lot about is there is no previous precedent to break a situation. I can't even call it a tiebreaker because it's not, but two teams with uneven amount of games. A lot of people have been pointing to win percentage, saying Kansas City gets the 1 because they're 14-3 and the Bills would be 13-3. And I'm about 98% sure that's how it would go. But I don't think that's a definitively proven thing based on what the NFL rulebook says. In fact, even in the Mid-American Conference, as you know, because we've dealt with this in 2020, there's some leagues across the world where when you have a no contest, it actually matches up the loss column and not the win column, where a 13-3 team would technically be tied with a 14-3 team.
Kind of what happened.
Yeah,
it's kind of what's happening.
And that's happened in the MAC before, and it would have happened again this year in the MAC had UB had a scenario to win the MAC East Division title this year. They had a game that was postponed, and had Ohio University lost against Bowling Green, UB would have won the MAC East with a win over Kent State, despite playing one less game and one less win. So, like I said, I don't think the NFL would go that way, but I do think there's been a lot of premature assumptions by people that Kansas City automatically is the number 1. Like I said, most likely, probably a super high probability, but anyone saying that as fact, I think, is going a little early with it, because until the NFL announces what they're going to do, I don't think we can firmly say one way or another. The fact that they were even discussing a bye or home field advantage scenario shows that NFL can make up a rule just like that and change up everything. So I am interested to see how the league will handle this situation.
Yeah, Mike. And what we're seeing potentially is something in the middle, not necessarily just win percentage, but a little bit of call out for the fact of honoring the loss column, because they're honoring the neutral field potentially based on the fact that they weren't able to achieve as many wins. You've mentioned the MAC doing it in 2 out of their 3 years. They gave Ohio a chance to do that 2 years ago prior, and then UB would have had a chance to do it this season had Ohio lost to BG. But there is a precedent in that scenario of major sports conferences that have a major conference game with a lot of money at stake for them to be able to make that decision, even though everywhere says win percentage. It's the most obvious thing ever. You go win percentage, but win percentage really in scenarios of like, that's just the most common way to put standings together. But in extenuating circumstances, you can make rulings of which way do you want to go with it. Do you punish the team that had to forfeit, or had a no decision, both, or do you punish, or do you not punish, or do you say both of those teams could achieve a win? They weren't able to play based on extenuating circumstances. Absolutely. And line up the loss column.
And Kevin, this is where it's important to check where you're getting your sources of information. As a former sports anchor and news reporter, and I went to J school for 4 years at Ohio, just because somebody writes something doesn't mean that it's factual. See where they're getting that information. See where they're sourcing their information. Are they saying the NFL rulebook? Are they making an assumption? If you see somebody tweet something and it doesn't line up, ask them. And maybe they don't respond but I will say there are things that are going out on social media from professional reporters that have covered the NFL for decades that is not officially stated things in the NFL rulebook. So that begs the question, why are you writing something as fact when you don't know it? And I just want to get the answers to those, because we know it's a no contest sale. We understand that. But there are different ways of interpreting no contest. And we know that in 2020, they were going to base it off a win percentage. But that was also a temporary COVID year situation. Yeah. Is that how it is going forward every year? We don't know that. Especially in a situation where Cincinnati and Buffalo have both beaten KC in the past this year. And there are other situations where you could make an argument both ways.
Yeah, thank you, Carl, for the super chat. I really appreciate it. And earlier as well, we had a super chat as well. So we really appreciate you guys tuning in. Yes, amazing news about Damar Hamlin. We talked, please, on demand, any of our on-demand listeners. We spoke about Damar earlier in the episode, spent even with Mark, the first probably 40 minutes of our situation and our thoughts and feelings around that environment and what the team and everyone's gone through. So please, if you're listening on Apple Podcast, we have an on-demand section right there in the beginning of our episode here talking about Damar exclusively. And question is, do we see Dean Marlowe play instead of at safety? I do not think so. He was inactive. The Bills were one play away from seeing Cam Lewis. I do believe Cam Lewis was the safety to play in that game. I think you'll see Cam Lewis. They saw him against Justin Jefferson. I think they'll want to see what they get from him again at the converted safety spot. He played pretty well outside of just the image everybody has in their head of the Jefferson ball behind his back. Just such a crazy play. And it would just happen to be Cam Lewis. I do think he's their Bills' fourth safety. And they would activate Dean Marlowe had he have been their fourth safety. I think Jaquan Johnson is a backup to Jordan Poyer anyways, and I don't think you see him. So in my opinion,
Lewis has been getting work since the preseason.
Yeah, I think this is his time to shine. The Bills did sign a safety yesterday. They had him on the practice squad for a month or so. And actually, the Bills don't have a safety on their practice squad. So they went off the Jets practice squad to sign Jared Maiden, a guy that was on their practice squad prior, a UDFA from Alabama with all the skill set. Has had injuries in the early portion of his career. So if they were going Marlowe, they wouldn't have signed Maiden, in my opinion, either, because they had an inactive safety that they could go to activate. So I'm not sure exactly the thoughts around Marlowe and the trading of a draft pick to get there. And the last point of all this, the free safety position could roll through Micah Hyde at some point in the next couple of weeks. It's looking more and more likely you could see him, especially if they achieve a bye. But Mike, it's more and more likely you might see Micah Hyde at some point this season.
That would be which is unbelievable.
Which is such an interesting perspective and way to look at this whole scenario. So we'll see if the Bills do see Micah Hyde. Not this week, but increasing odds as the Bills go on forward. So that's kind of the plan. I don't see Dean Marlowe being that guy. I don't think you sign Maiden. Use a roster spot cutting Xavier Rhodes. I don't see that being a thing you would have done had he just gone to Marlowe. And Marlowe's a special teamer. I think he's there for depth. I think he was originally traded for after the Poyer injuries that he's had. So I think that he would also be maybe someone that they would play over Jaquan Johnson, maybe with Poyer box role and his run stopping ability as Marlowe. He's not known for his coverage ability. So that's my opinion on the safety position here going forward on what the Bills may do on that. And it would be wonderful to see Micah Hyde suit up in this game. With all that being said, the Chiefs still do gain an advantage, in my opinion, by the fact of the Bills and the Bengals not completing their game. Yes, that might be in a neutral site, but they had a better chance to potentially be in Buffalo and have to play week 2. Now they get a bye and a neutral site. Still a pretty good compromise for Kansas City. I don't think there should be any complaints out of there. It is Baltimore that could complain a little bit about the scenario, but they're going to get a coin flip if they are able to win their game. And the Bengals could complain a little bit too, if they'd like to, that they, I've already seen it a little bit, unfortunately, that there should at least be maybe a coin flip or some variation in that game too, because
really everybody loses out except for Kansas City. Kansas City is the only team that really gains. They
get the bye and a neutral field. That's getting off nice. That's getting off nice.
Buffalo has a gripe because, yes, things weren't looking good early on against Cincinnati, but there were still 51 minutes left in the game. Buffalo,
they have the worst first quarter DVOA.
Yeah, the Bills could have adjusted. You can't assume that the Bills' offense would struggle. They were going to get their points, so you can't assume Cincinnati runs away with it. I know it didn't look good for the Bills early on, but you can't assume that. But so the Bills have the gripe because obviously they lose out on a potential bye and home field advantage in the playoffs. Cincinnati has a gripe because with a win and a Kansas City loss, Cincinnati could have had a chance at the 1 seed. But even more so, even if Cincinnati wasn't going to get the 1 seed, they beat the Bills and they finish off the Ravens. They have a chance at the 2, and then Buffalo could be going to Cincinnati for the AFC Championship. Now Cincinnati is in a position where if Buffalo and Kansas City win their playoff games, as long as the Bills win this weekend, Cincinnati is going to have to go on the road and most likely win back-to-back road playoff games, which they did last season. But against Tennessee and Kansas City, I would say it's going to be more difficult to do that a second time around if Cincinnati has to play the Bills than Chiefs at Arrowhead, depending on how that plays out. And then, like you said, Baltimore, they really do lose out. Had they won their Sunday night game, this wouldn't be a situation where they would have lost out. But to have that division, any chance at that taken away, that's probably the biggest gripe. But the NFL had no answers for this. There really wasn't a clean way forward. The only way the NFL could have avoided a situation where they're going to aggravate a fan base was if they either played this Bills-Cincy game a week later, which honestly doesn't seem the right thing to do, or you cancel the Raiders-Chiefs game. So then the Bills, Bengals, and Chiefs all play the same amount of games, and you get an even potential tiebreak scenario. But it was never going to work out. As soon as it hit Tuesday afternoon and you knew that we hadn't had any good news yet at that point, there was no way they were going to schedule the game for Wednesday. And it was pretty much a wait and see what the NFL is going to do. And we're getting some ideas, but we still don't know officially how this is going to play out.
Yeah. And I already have, as we transition to football, and we've transitioned even in this show and maybe in life and future and in odds now that after this week is completed here in the next couple of days, really 3 days, and we'll know these answers. We've already had people complaining, I hate to see it. And I've seen it in my mentions. I won't entertain anything around the Bills or screwing everybody, or I'm not going to entertain that. I don't think that there's any way that the Bills would ever prefer this scenario ever in life. So I don't want to hear that the Bills should forfeit or this and that. It's just a terrible
forfeit
take.
Isn't even a possibility.
It's just a terrible take if you're a salty fan of any team, whether Chiefs, Bengals. And
the commissioner doesn't even have the power. If people read what the rule book says, the commissioner does not have the power to rule a game a forfeit.
It's a no
decision. The commissioner also doesn't have the power to rule the game a tie. That's why they did a no contest, because the NFL commissioner does not have the power written into all the NFL official rules to do that. I understand why fans were talking about a forfeit, and I even understand why fans were talking about the Bills forfeiting this weekend. The NFL didn't have the power to do that with the Bengals game. And I'm going to be just speaking how I feel on this. This New England Patriots game on Sunday there was never a possibility of a forfeit. If they had to wait a week to play the Patriots, they would have waited a week to play the Patriots. And the reason being, as much as the mental health aspect in the recovery of Damar Hamlin would impact the Bills' ability to play this week, the NFL was not going to let the New England Patriots get into the playoffs on a win or go home game, most likely, by getting in by a forfeit when it directly impacts potentially 2 or 3 other teams, when it impacts Pittsburgh, when it impacts the Miami Dolphins, when it impacts potentially the Jacksonville Jaguars if they were to lose on Saturday night. I totally get the gesture. If, say, we hadn't had the good news that the Bills should just forfeit, don't worry about the game, get the bye. I guarantee you, if the Bills weren't able to play the Patriots this weekend, they would have pushed that game back a week and played that Patriots game.
They gave the Bills an option.
One way or another. The NFL was not going to give a team a playoff spot when it would have a direct impact on 2 or 3 other teams and their games the final week.
Like I could have seen the NFL if say the Bills really needed to postpone Patriots versus whatever team would have been in for their spot instead.
That's the only
like a play-in game.
Yeah. But there was, I understand as we said earlier in the show, the trauma was real. The mental health aspect is real. What everybody has gone through is incredibly difficult and odd. But the last thing you want to do in these situations is to come to quick decisions that don't have thought involved in it. It's tough for the NFL, and the NFL is oftentimes on the wrong side of these decisions. You have the business side competing with the human side, and then you got the competitive balance perspective. In the business side and the competitive balance side would say that game would have to be played one way or another. Like I said, I would understand if it wasn't played this weekend had we not gotten the good news. But according to people that I've spoke to, there has been no discussion of this game getting canceled.
Absolutely. So not going to I just don't even listen to any complaints around the way the league handled it. This is what they had to do. McDermott and Taylor said there was no initiative to play this game. There was no, at the time, even there was no delay. We're not going to punish a team who went through this emotional event and this catastrophic event to this player. Doesn't make any sense.
The Bengals were on board too.
The Bengals agreed they could get an equal forfeit. They agreed to not play the game just because I know the scoreboard said 7-3 at midfield, but just because that doesn't earn them a win. Like they also walked across the field and agreed to postpone the game and or no contest it. They don't get a win for that either. Unfortunately, they didn't win. You could say they loved their game plan for 9 minutes, I guess. If you really want to go there, but the Bills are historically good in the second and third quarters per metrics.
And they're getting the ball to start the second half.
And they're getting the guy to start. Exactly. They're getting this ball to start the third quarter. They could have been down 10, even if 11.
Say the Bengals score a touchdown on that second drive, even score
another. They're down 11.
And they have 21 points. The Bills get a touchdown too. It could be 21-17 at the half. And then the Bills could get a touchdown. And then next thing you know, they're up to start the third quarter after
midway through the third, right. Midway through the third, it's 24-21.
And how many games this year have we seen the Bills have those struggles early on? I can think of the Cleveland game where the Bills didn't get a first down until early on in the second quarter. The Bills had their struggles against Detroit. Sometimes it's crazy when you look at a 12-3 team and you realize like there were struggles in some of these contests. But like you said, Kev, in the second, third quarter, the Bills have been a dominant football team this year, and they have found a way to win many games late in the fourth quarter, coming back. Even think about Baltimore, Kevin. That game felt over in the early part of the second quarter, and the Bills come back to win. So there was no way the Bills would ever, or the league would ever accept
a full strength Baltimore team. Yeah.
Especially when the Bills have already shown the ability to come back from a major deficit. And Cincinnati has also shown the ability to blow a big lead against New England, a team that barely can even move the ball offensively just a week prior. So I know there's a few people that were discussing that on social media. I do want to say I don't think that was the majority of people. And I don't want to call out Bengals fans. I know there was a post that mentioned some Bengals fans were being a little bit whiny. I do think Bengals fans have been incredibly gracious for the most part and have been tremendous in their support of the Bills, Damar Hamlin, and everything. The vigils at the hospital, the reaction, the donations to Damar Hamlin's foundation. So I don't want to call out anybody at this moment in time. I know sometimes when traumatic things, bad things happen, it's human nature to want to place blame on someone or have a target. I think in the end, the NFL made the right decision with the help of Zach Taylor, Sean McDermott. The fan bases have rallied together. The whole NFL family has rallied together. The country has come together, which is crazy because that doesn't happen often. So I don't want to play the blame game with anyone. I just want to be grateful and thankful that Damar Hamlin appears to be making solid progress, should make a recovery, and that we have come together in this situation.
Yeah. And as we heard, I want to address, obviously I tweeted earlier when I first thought of it about the 10 men on the field against New England to honor Hamlin and what he did and what he went through for this organization and this team. And just being an immense, great character in his Pittsburgh community, in the Buffalo community, and just an amazing person, that they would leave his free safety spot open in the Bills defense this Sunday. And I went on the Pat's Pulpit show with Pat Lane, and we just had Mark Schofield on from SB Nation. They both confirmed that Bill Belichick would take a delay of game penalty, and the Bills would obviously decline that penalty and then play football. So that's the idea there with how they would open this game, with a charged and emotionally great atmosphere in Highmark Stadium. Under no influence do I see a scenario where they go deep to the Hamlin spot. That is not Bill Belichick as much as we think it is.
We can joke about that, but that's not Bill.
That's not true. It's not going to lose them the game. That is not how you honor somebody. And Bill Belichick is all about history. He's all about honor. He's all about respect of the sport and other sports, as Mark mentioned earlier on the show, like lacrosse and baseball. So this is not just a factor of they're going to make some big play down the left sideline. That's not the instance of this. So, Mike, it's been an action-packed show, 1 hour and 30 minutes here. We appreciate everybody tuning into under these circumstances, and great news of the Damar Hamlin updates that we have. And we're assuming and hoping and praying, and whatever we do, for good vibes, for better updates, even better updates. And getting to stable condition would be the greatest news before the game ever. Imagine that on the Jumbotron. He's in stable condition, which is an upgrade to critical condition in the medical society. And he is off the ventilator, and the news of portraying that down to the Bills sideline and the fans, him on the Jumbotron, if he's able to write or talk, if he's feeling up to it, or even his family members, the emotion and the charge that could give, and him on the Jumbotron, maybe for that first defensive snap. I don't know, whatever the scenarios may be, but just that's the stuff we're praying for and hoping for on Sunday at 1:00 to energize the stadium, and him giving him his all. And quite frankly, I want to honor him with him off the field, or with him on his 10-man roster. He is a starting safety on this roster. That is what should happen. And I don't really care. I don't think Belichick would ever do it, but I don't really care if he runs to the left and tries to get 12 yards or 22 yards, or throws it deep and tries to beat Poyer, or whatever the scenario is. I have this thought in my head that Trey White or Jordan Poyer or whoever would break it up, or it just is inconsequential to what, in my opinion, what the sentiment would be. So that is my opinion on how I'd like to see this gone, and hoping for in the next 2 to 3 days, some really traditionally and some continued great news on Damar Hamlin, and the story of what we were able to do, honoring the people on the field who was able to save his life, and him fighting for his life. I really don't care about if Belichick disrespects him. I don't see that, Mike. I don't see that. But that's just my opinion on what I'd like to see happen to start the game. So, Mike, what are your final thoughts here as we've gone an hour and 33 minutes?
Yeah, final thoughts, just continuing to think and pray for Damar Hamlin, his family, his teammates from the point he was young, high school, college, Bills players, Bills coaches, the entire Bills Mafia community, because this was a very traumatic thing that we went through, all of us together on Monday night, especially thinking of the Bills players, because they were there up in person, and they saw that close up and personal. So hoping that Damar continues to progress, that we get more good news, that his family feels the support from the rest of the nation, and that hopefully the Bills can use the positive news to basically build off of and use that energy going forward the rest of the year. regardless of what the NFL decides for their seed, regardless of what happens on Sunday. Just know that we are all united behind them, and that whatever support they need, we hope to provide it for them.
And we'll leave you with one final tweet from our own Hansel from Cover One. For the people saying the Bills would have lost to the Bengals as an argument for the Bills losing that game, here's a stat. The Bills have trailed 5 games this season with 6 minutes left in the first quarter. 5. The Bills are 5-0 in those games. So I will leave you with that stat as we consider that game should not matter and should not equal anything beyond what had happened and what needed to happen in those dire situations. We'll be back at you at our normal time, talking playoffs, maybe with Mark. We'll be back at you. We'll see. Is it the Dolphins? Is it a bye? I don't even know. I don't know, Mike. There's so many unknowns, but we'll be back at you at our normal time, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. from the Cover One Podcast Network. Kevin Masseri, Mike Bunt. Stay tuned for our additional content. I think the Air Raid Hour is continuing the pregame show here on Sunday, and more continued coverage of the Damar Hamlin situation, any emergency news that we need to, maybe one of us will go live, anything news with the bye or rule changes, maybe one of us will bring in some breaking content. But from everybody, we really appreciate everyone tuning in on their Thursday night here with us. Pretty active chat today. We appreciate every single one of you. A pretty active discussion. Appreciate all of your comments and thoughts and super chats, and prayers for Damar, prayers, thoughts, feelings, emotions, whatever you can give for the continued great news from what we've heard. Just a miracle news and continued better news as the game approaches and as the Bills come together as a team and organization here Sunday at 1:00 against New England, and root for a Raiders victory on Saturday afternoon. Mike, Kevin, really appreciate everybody being here and being in here and listening to our thoughts and our emotions and our words on all of this. And we really, as always, tune into all of our shows here on the podcast network, Kevin and Mike, and we'll check you guys Tuesday at 7:00 right here live on YouTube.
Josh Allen looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown. Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a